is Matt, and I'm going to be talking today about my game engine that I've been working on for quite a while now, somewhat in my spare time and non-seriously. This is my little thing to hack on, so don't take it too seriously. Don't expect it to be the best in the world or anything like that. It's something that's evolving all the time. But this year, in 2021, I do have plans to make this actually usable to make games. So I'm just going to be talking about where it's at, what the plans are, and what I've been doing with it recently. So if you like code and game engines and stuff, you will probably find this interesting. And I talk about this kind of stuff and technology in general on this channel a lot, so consider subscribing if you want to see more from me and more of my shenanigans. I also just give random talks sometimes that some people seem to like, so hop in, let's go for a code ride. Alright, so one of the things you'll notice about this repo, and it is here at this URL. I'll leave a link down below in case you want to check it out further. One of the things about it is, well, the branches are kind of a mess, and that's something I intend on straightening up pretty soon, about as soon as I can. But so there's a master branch, and the master's pretty broken. It works, sure, it's good enough, but it's not really. I kind of branched off from that, and rather than making a completely new repo or anything, I just made some branches that are very different. So the master branch is like legacy right now. It will go away at some point. There's no real official release, but I did make some tags for stamps I thought would be neat to look back on. But well, about a month ago, I decided I was just going to do a whole new thing. So right now, the way this is, there's like, you'll see this main AA engine branch, and that is like the library, and all these other things are just sub projects. So these are just standard C++ projects, these other ones here, and they all link to this main engine, this main library. So I decided to make a branch called isolation, fitting because of, you know, the whole pandemic thing, right? But also, the point of isolation here is to isolate the library and not have a bunch of sub projects in with the project. And I think the way to make it simple as possible is to just cut all the, what do you call it, the chaff? I don't know. So there's just the library, and that's it. It has source and includes. Simple enough, and you'll find all sorts of stuff for a game engine in here. And I took it even a step further, and I went ahead and made isolation 2, where basically I once again branched off and decided to start adding unit tests. So the only thing it has in the project now is the main library that you link to, and unit tests you can run to make sure everything is actually functioning with the library. And that is still in progress. It's got a lot of ways to go. I also kind of redid the README. And as you can see, it is this simple to run once you get it going, and that's one of the points of it, is just make it super simple. You just include the header, and then you just call run. Because this is a state-based library, sort of like, I guess sort of like a lot of libraries are, where you have like a state of things, and you run it, and you can change the state, and it changes how things work. There's a lot more to it than that, but basically you can do your own design flow before you hit this run, and make it do whatever you want. You can make it load models, sounds, do logic with models and sounds, and stuff like that. So now I'm just going to pop open Visual Studio here, and we're just going to open the project. Yeah, I'll show at the end how to actually include this library in your own project and get your own project going using just this library. So that's what I've done here with this project called Quell the Panic. I was going to make like a little survival game. It's just you know, it's kind of a test platform in a way to see how usable the library is to make a game. And that's something I want to do every once in a while, just to kind of get a feel from where it's at from a different perspective. One of the things that's really hard about working on an entire game engine by yourself is there's so much to do, and sometimes when you're down in one area, like sometimes I'll get down into like, I don't know, something about textures, and I'll just be there for days, and I kind of forget about like all the other stuff that needs done and what might not be working properly and stuff like that. So trying to like just stepping back and like taking it from a new perspective of the freshest mind I can, like ignoring all the internal work I'm doing and saying, hey, if I'm a user coming from the outside just trying to use this engine, what roadblocks am I going to run into? And that's kind of the point of all these other little projects. I think there's another one in here. that actually works a little better called Classic Asteroids. And this user, there it is. So I made a little asteroids game out of the library. This is kind of out of the old version of the library, but it does all function. And I talked about this in the previous ones, but it was pretty cool. You know, there's music and sound effects and everything here. So this was kind of a early state of testing things out. Now, a lot of improvements have been made since then, and this won't work on the current isolation branch because a lot of changes need made, but it's something I might update. But if you do clone this classic asteroids, it does automatically link to the right versions of everything, so it should just run. You should be able to just open it with Visual Studio and run it. Okay, so let's take a look at what this project looks like, and then I'm going to show you how to use it. And hopefully you're enjoying this. Just a vlog. I don't know what people are going to get out of this, but I just think it's interesting, and I like having conversations about this stuff. So alright, so over on the right side you'll see the main project right here, and it's got a bunch of files. Some of them are even collapsed, but I'm going to collapse that for a moment, and you'll see the unit tests here. Now, I don't know if this is one of the pitfalls about unit tests, and one thing I found kind of annoying that I'm just going to mention because maybe there's something I'm missing about this, but I noticed that I couldn't step through the debugger when running unit tests, which I'm kind of doing these unit tests in a weird way because I'm like launching windows, like actual physical windows and stuff. So for example, let me just show you these tests real quick. Got a set of 6 tests here, and we can like go through them all because they basically just start up the engine and check that it runs correctly. So like the first one just does a little launch, shuts down after a second, so it's just a quick run. The second one does the same thing, but it does a soft reset, and then it changes the background color somewhere. There it is, and then it runs. So just some sample run cases to make sure it actually runs properly. And then we start getting into more things. This one loads the model and moves the camera. This one tests that the key bindings are working with ASDW and make it move around a little bit. The next one here, it's a first person test, I think. No, that's WASDA. The next one's a first person test that just tests some first person movement setup, so you can actually look around with your mouse and move around with ASDW like, you know, like any normal first person game. So just making sure that functionality is all good to go. So another thing about these tests is it's something that a programmer could look at and be like, ah, here's how you do that. So you could literally copy all this code and get your first person started and then edit from there, for example. So it's just kind of a nice way to see how to actually use the engine too. And then the last one we have is a custom shader test. I've been messing with shaders. They still need a lot of work. But one of the things I did is I made some of the core ones, like the one that just shows the diff, which is the colors of your textures. That one's internal, so you can just use it if you're not doing lights and you just want to make sure like some base stuff works. You can just use the diff shader. And I also added in some support for loading your own shaders. So you can load your own shaders or you can use the internal ones. But there's a lot of, this is messy right now. Like the variables have to be named certain things. There's a lot of work to be done on that front. While it kind of works right now, it's not really in an ideal place for true development and versatile development. It's like you have to stick with a very certain pattern of doing things right now with these shaders until they become more improved. So that's one of the big things I need to work on and that I've been toying with and learning about because I do want to give some tutorials on shaders too for my OpenGL tutorial that I've been working on. So one of the things I do here is I like to really test things thoroughly and make sure I understand them on this engine before I go give a tutorial. So yeah, that's the last one there is the custom shader test, and I'll just hit a quick run. We'll just run all the tests here so you can see it fly through all of these and kind of see what it looks like. Now this isn't super impressive, but and it also doesn't test everything in the engine. There's no sound test yet. I still need to make those. I need a skybox test because there is a skybox that works. So there's a blank window with a different color. There's zooming out a model. There's move with WASDA, and after you hit each of those, it goes on to the next test. And it's loading, it looks like, and here's the first person one. There's just a few basic things to tell you stuff, but you can see I put some negative X and the Z so you can kind of tell what direction you're looking. So that way you can see it works, mouse movement works, even keys work. And I think I have a full screen function here too to make sure it resizes the viewport correctly, and that seems to be okay. And we're just gonna get out of this now. There we go. And the last one is kind of broken. So you'll see it's tried to load a model, but it didn't load the textures. There is some bug going on right now where if you previously loaded the texture and then you cleared it out and then you load the same thing later, for some reason it glitches out. I'm still working on fixing that. So there's a lot of little things like that, and when I'm diving in and fixing those, I'm often learning a lot about things I didn't realize before. Okay, so now you might be asking if, you might want to play around with this and see what I got going on and see if there's anything to learn from it. How do you actually use it and include it in your own project? Well, it's pretty easy to do, and I'm just going to show you that by starting up a new project and walking through the steps. Okay, so let's go about making a new project and then link it in. Now, what you got to do is just, well, I'm going to be using Visual Studio here, so just open Visual Studio and create a new project. So we'll go create a new project here, and we'll just do an empty project using the C++ workflow, of course. So you got to have that installed. That's assumed. You can name it whatever you want. I'm just going to name it ASDF for a second because it doesn't matter. I'm just going to delete this after this video anyway, but I just want to show you an example if you're making a new project how to link this particular library. And it's the same way you link any submodule, really. But I don't think many people know this, to be honest. It's pretty somewhat obscure, I think. All right, well, so now we have this. There's no code. There's nothing here yet. It's just an empty project. And if we want to add to this, basically what you want to do is go to your Solution Explorer here, however you get to that, and just add a root file. You can probably do this second. I'm just going to leave it named source.cpp. That's going to be fine. And I just kind of want to put the base case in here so that we know when it's working. Obviously it's not going to find it yet. It doesn't understand what this is, but if we put our root case in here when it is working, we'll at least know. So return, actually I'm going to use the namespace, busy namespace AA, that way I don't have to retype it all the time. It's going to be engine run. So when this all works, we know we have it all linked up correctly. So the next thing we got to do is just, basically what we got to do is add the submodule to this project. And you have to do that through the terminal. There's no way that I know of any way off the top of my head to do this through Visual Studio. So what I usually do is I usually use fork. I use the program fork. So I'm going to launch fork. And there it is, fork. Don't know about fork, it's just fork.dev. It's just a program to help with Git. And what I'm going to do is go file, it's new repository, and I'm going to point to that project I just made, which is this ASDF right here. So I'm going to double click that, hit select, and boom, it'll kind of initialize it. And we're not going to commit any of this yet, but what we can do now that we have it selected, we can just go to the console up here. Now you can manually go to your console and do this too. You don't have to use fork. And it gives us the little Git client here. So all we got to do is go Git submodule, add, then the path to the submodule. Hold on a second, let me look this up, make sure I'm doing this right. Okay, so there is some documentation. If you just do a Google search, you'll find the site all about Git submodules. You can learn a lot. Also, if you just type in the wrong commands, it does try to help you some. So basically what we want to do is Git submodule. We're going to do add, and then we're going to specify a branch, because I don't want to be using that master branch. I want to be using that isolation 2 branch. So ultimately, we just need this branch and path. So we're going to go Git submodule, add -b, and the b is isolation 2. And then we need the repo. I went to it on GitHub on the master branch, but it doesn't matter. We're going to specify that one anyway. So we just need this root link here. So copy that, and I'm going to go back to here and just paste that in. Pasting, there we go. And then the last thing here, you can specify a folder you want this to be in. Otherwise, it's just going to be in its own folder. So I'm going to just name this, usually I make a folder called submodules or modules or something like that. I'm just going to call this one AA engine in all caps. Why not? But you can name it whatever you want, or just not use that at all, and it'll just clone as well what you see in this. But it's nice to kind of have your submodules in a folder sometimes. That way you can keep them a little cleaner. Now it's going to clone all this stuff and do its thing here. It's going to take just a minute. So now what we can do is we can go back into Visual Studio, back to our Solution Explorer, and go up here and just go Add Existing Project, because we've cloned it, it exists, and we want to go, well, into our folder. There's the folder we cloned it into, and we want to go into the engine, and there's the project right there. Now you'll see it's up here. So this AA engine is only made for 64-bit, so you do have to switch to 64-bit. You might as well just go to Configuration Manager and just edit and remove the 32 or whatever, which is fine. And you can do the same for each of these little projects. You'll see that this one already has it removed, but the one you just made won't. It's not that big of a deal, you just have to have them set right. So we'll just go ahead and hit close. But now you see we're on 64. It still doesn't see this stuff because we just need to link it. So we go to this ASDF project, right click on it, add reference to AA engine. And now this include path. Sure, we could make it between double quotes and really long, but I like to just go to the preferences here and change this like I did earlier, as this makes it so that if someone else clones it, it will just work. Solution dir, and the name of that folder, and then AA engine, and include. There we go. Now we'll be able to easily include just like so. That should clear up after it figures it out. There we go. Now when we just hit play, it's going to build everything. This is going to take a minute. As you can see, it's building the entire engine there. It's going to build our final source on this little project, and that's going to be it. That's all you got to do to get this going. Now there's a little more to know once you get into this, like how to update the submodule and update just the branch. If you have questions, you're welcome to ask. There we go. Okay, and it's running. There's a base run. So now we could start actually, like, building a game in this source file over here, and it would show. So I believe this works a lot like raylib. I haven't used raylib, but I noticed it and realized that I'm basically rebuilding raylib, which isn't the intention. I just, doing my own thing basically. But if you want a fully functioning, working one, raylib seems like the way to go. But yeah, I started this way before I had any idea what raylib was. So I'm not trying to copy raylib. I just realized that one day that, hey, this kind of already exists. But I'm doing a separate thing. I'm definitely not trying to do what raylib is doing, although you can make games with raylib too. Alright, but anyway, if you need to update the submodule or do special stuff with it, you can find documentation here about how to do it. I usually just use fork, go to the console, and I believe you go like git update submodule. Alright, well, I think I've covered enough in this video. It's been pretty long. Thank you all for watching. I hope your coding adventures are going great. And I want to do a little special shout out to my Patreons. I'll put something up here, and just thank you guys so much. It really helps me keep going when people sign up over there. Yeah, I know life hasn't been easy for a lot of people these last few years, but let's hang in there, guys. Let's make 2021 great, and we'll see you in the next episode. Peace out.